The record was still spinning when they found her. Pop, pop, pop. Billie Holiday's voice long gone, just a needle hitting the center. And on the pavement outside, one shoe, patent leather, size 6. The shoe belonged to Ruby Williams. She was 14. And what she saw 3 days ago, that's what got her killed. Not music anymore, just that rhythmic pop, pop, pop of the needle hitting the label center. Someone had been playing Billie Holiday. The apartment smelled of honeysuckle from the open window, mixing with something sharp and metallic. Ruby's shoe was on the pavement outside, just one, patent leather, the kind her grandmother saved 3 months to buy, size 6, still warm from the July sun. The bullet had come through the window at an angle nobody expected, not from the street, from somewhere above, somewhere calculated. She'd been reaching for the record player, 14 years old, standing on her toes, and her hand was still extended when she fell, like she was trying to catch something that was already gone. Bumpy Johnson got the call at 3:47 in the afternoon. He was in Marcus Garvey Park when the payphone rang. Nobody used that phone unless it mattered. He listened for 11 seconds without speaking. His face didn't change, but something behind his eyes went absolutely still. Then he walked, not rushed, not slow. The kind of walking had made people move out of the way without him asking. The crowd was already forming, neighbors on the sidewalk holding each other. A boy, maybe 10, was crying into his mother's dress, saying he'd heard it but thought it was nothing. Bumpy took the stairs like he'd been there 1,000 times. He'd sat in their kitchen 3 months ago and promised Ruby's grandmother that her block was safe, that he gave his word. She'd believed him. Now he was about to see what that promise was worth. Officer Jeffries was inside, standing too close to the window. He looked up when Bumpy entered, started to say something about police business. "Where is she?" Bumpy said, not a question. Ruby was on the floor between the record player and the couch. Someone had covered her with a yellow blanket, the kind her grandmother crocheted during winter evenings. The blanket had flowers on it. They were the same color as the blood seeping through. Bumpy stood there for a long time, didn't kneel, just stood with his hands loose at his sides. "We're canvassing," Jeffrey said. "Got officers on every corner." Bumpy looked at him, really looked. The angle, the bullet came from above. He moved to the window, not down at the street, but up. The Riverside Hotel, 6 stories, under renovation, windows covered in paper, nobody inside except construction crews. Except construction stopped at 5, and it was Wednesday. Crews knocked off early on Wednesdays. Everyone knew that. "I'm giving you 48 hours. For what? For you to do your job. After that, I do mine." Outside, a man in a gray suit stood across the street, not doing anything, just watching Bumpy. They made eye contact for 3 seconds. Then the man smiled, not friendly, not threatening, just acknowledging. He turned and walked away. Willie, one of the kids who ran numbers, touched Bumpy's arm. "Mr. Johnson, Ruby said something 3 days ago." "What'd she say?" "She saw a white man in a fancy car parked on 138th at 2 in the morning. Said Councilman Barrett got in the car with him. Said Barrett looked scared. Said the white man handed him something, an envelope maybe." The air felt different suddenly, thicker. "She tell anyone else?" "Don't think so. I told her to forget about it." Willie's voice cracked. Bumpy walked to the Riverside Hotel. The service entrance lock took him 16 seconds. What he found in room 604 would tell him everything he needed to know and prove this wasn't about Ruby at all. Inside, the hotel was gutted. He took the stairs, all 6 floors. The top floor was different. He found the right room by the angle, by understanding geometry and lines of sight and the way killers think. Room 604. Inside, the room was empty except for a folding chair positioned at the window, facing Ruby's building. On the windowsill, a cigarette butt, fresh, expensive tobacco, and scratched into the dust on the floor, 48. They knew he'd come. They knew he'd give the police exactly 48 hours. They knew him. This wasn't random. This wasn't about Ruby at all. This was about him. Bumpy sat in the dark for 20 minutes, not thinking, just breathing the stale air someone else had breathed while waiting for a 14-year-old girl to stand in front of her grandmother's window. Professional. He called Tommy. "I need evidence disappeared before morning." "This about the Williams girl?" "Yeah." "Consider it done. Bumpy, whoever did this made a mistake. They thought killing a child would scare you, but you don't scare. You calculate." His next stop was the library on 135th Street. Miss Chan brought him Ruby's card catalog. "She came in 5 times this month, asked about newspapers, spent 2 hours going through papers from May and June, took notes." "What was she looking for?" "She asked me if newspapers ever lied, if they left things out on purpose." Ruby had checked out 2 books, New York City Government, A Citizen's Guide, and Understanding Municipal Contracts. Miss Chan pulled out a manila folder. "She left this, said she'd be back for it." Inside were photocopies that would connect every piece, Barrett, the money, and the reason a 14-year-old girl had to die. Inside, photocopies of newspaper articles about Councilman Barrett announcing a revitalization project, federal money, millions in contracts. In the margins, in Ruby's neat handwriting, "Who is Northern Development Corp? No address, no history. Where did they come from?" Ruby had seen something. Then she tried to understand what she'd seen. Smart girl, careful girl. But someone had been watching. At Lenox Hill Hospital, he found Ruby's grandmother, Dorothy Williams, sitting in a chair by the window. 68 years old, raised Ruby alone. Her hands were completely still. "Mr. Johnson, you promised me that my baby would be safe." Bumpy didn't look away. "Yes, ma'am, I did." "And now she's dead." "Mrs. Williams, did Ruby talk to you about seeing something, about Councilman Barrett?" "Sunday night. She said she had seen the councilman getting into a car with a white man, said it seemed strange. I told her to mind her business. I told her to forget about it." "She didn't forget. She went to the library, started researching, started asking questions." Understanding crossed Dorothy's face. Then horror. "She went back Tuesday. I thought she just loved reading. I didn't know she was—" Being Ruby, being smart and curious and brave. Dorothy covered her mouth with both hands. Bumpy stood. "Mrs. Williams, I can't bring her back, but in 48 hours, everyone who had a hand in this will wish they'd never heard the name Ruby Williams." "Will they go to jail?" "No, ma'am, probably not. The law doesn't work that way, not for people like us."
"Then what good is your promise? Because there are things worse than jail, Mrs. Williams. There are things that hurt deeper and last longer." She studied his face. "Make them hurt," she said quietly. Bumpy called Councilman Barrett's office. What Barrett would confess in the next 30 minutes would be enough to destroy careers, end political futures, and expose a conspiracy reaching all the way to Chicago. But first, Barrett had to understand what happened when you took something precious from Harlem. Barrett arrived at Minton's at 9:15, alone, trying to look casual, but his shoulders too tight. "Mr. Johnson, I heard about the Williams girl. Tragic." "Cut it," Bumpy said quietly. "You got in a car 2 weeks ago. 2 in the morning. White man. Handed you an envelope. Ruby Williams saw you." The blood drained from Barrett's face. "And then Ruby Williams started asking questions, started researching your revitalization project, started wondering who Northern Development Corporation really was. And now she's dead." I had nothing to do with who was in the car, Barrett." Bumpy leaned forward. You got daughters, 2 of them, 12 and 15. I'm not threatening them. I'm reminding you what it feels like to be a parent. Ruby's grandmother had that. You took it from her. So now you're gonna tell me everything." "His name is Vincent Carbone," Barrett whispered finally. The name sat between them like a body. "He's from Chicago, connected. He came to New York 6 months ago with a proposal. Federal money through the right channels, make everyone rich. We just had to approve the contracts." "And Ruby saw you taking the bribe." "She was just a kid. We didn't think she'd understand what she saw." "So you had her killed?" "I didn't order anything. Carbone said he'd handle it. I thought he meant paying her off or scaring her. I didn't know he'd—" Barrett was crying now. "Write it down," Bumpy said. "Everything, every name, every dollar, every meeting." "They'll kill me." "Maybe, or maybe you do the right thing for once and live with yourself after." 2 hours later, Bumpy had 6 pages of confession, handwritten, signed. Bumpy's next call was to Marcus Webb, a journalist at the Amsterdam News. They had worked together before. Marcus owed him one. No, Marcus owed him 3. "Bumpy, it's late. You remember Ruby Williams?" "Should I?" "You will. She's about to be the most important story you've written in 3 years." "Ruby Williams, 14 years old, shot yesterday. You know her?" "No, why would I?" "She was killed because she saw Councilman Barrett taking bribes, started asking questions about federal housing money. You're a journalist. This is your job. Then report the news. I've got Barrett's written confession, names, dates, amounts, enough to blow open every corrupt deal in Harlem." Bumpy paused. "But there's one more person I need to visit first. The man who actually pulled the trigger." Bumpy's last call was to Tommy. "Vincent Carbone, Chicago guy. I need to know where he is right now."
90 minutes later, the Plaza Hotel, room 847. Bumpy took a cab. The elevator to the 8th floor felt longer than it was. His reflection stared back, tired, older than his years. Room 847. Vincent Carbone opened the door 6 inches, chain attached. "Mr. Johnson, I wondered when you'd find me. That why you left the number, 48? Had to see if the legend was real. Smart enough. Smart enough to know you can't touch me. You kill me, you die. My employers will make you disappear." "I know. Then why are you here?" "To look at the man who killed a child and slept well after. It was business. The girl asked questions. I solved a problem. Her name was Ruby." Bumpy pulled out a photograph. Ruby at graduation, smiling. "In 6 hours, her face is going to be on every front page. The story next to it will have your boss's name, Barrett's name, every name in the chain. Federal agencies will be asking questions." Carbone's expression changed. "You didn't." "Reporter I know. He's got Barrett's confession, Ruby's research, everything." Carbone stepped back and closed the door. 30 seconds later, muffled shouting, a phone call. The door opened again. Carbone's face was white. "You just started a war." "You started it when you killed Ruby Williams. I'm just finishing it." 48 hours, that's what you gave me. In 48 hours, your comfortable life ends. You'll be looking over your shoulder forever. He turned to leave. "One more thing. Dorothy Williams. You go near her, and I'll forget everything I just said about consequences. We clear?" Bumpy walked out into the night.
Tomorrow morning, the newspapers would hit the stands, and Ruby Williams, a 14-year-old girl who loved library books and asked too many questions, would finally get the last word. The city was quieter now. He stood on the sidewalk outside the plaza, watching taxis pass, thinking about Ruby, about a girl who'd wanted to understand the world, who'd seen something wrong and tried to make it right with library books and quiet determination. She'd been braver than most adults, and they'd killed her for it. But in dying, she'd done something they never expected. She'd created a record, a trail, evidence that couldn't be erased or intimidated or bought off. He pulled out his phone, dialed one last number. Dorothy Williams answered on the first ring. "Mr. Johnson?" "Mrs. Williams, tomorrow morning, buy every newspaper you can find. Read them all. Look for Ruby's name." "What did you do?" "What she would have wanted. She asked questions. Now everyone's going to hear the answers." "Will it bring her back?" "No, ma'am." "Will it matter?" Bumpy looked up at the plaza, at the city that had taken Ruby and given nothing back. "Yes, ma'am, it'll matter. Maybe Ruby saved someone we'll never know about. Maybe that's how justice works when the law won't." Dorothy was crying now, something that sounded almost like relief. "Thank you." "I didn't do it for thanks." "I know. You did it for her." The next morning, newspapers hit the stands at 6 a.m. Ruby's graduation photo was on the front page of 3 major papers. The headline read, "Federal Housing Scandal, How a 14-year-old Girl Uncovered Millions in Fraud Before She Was Silenced." Marcus had written it like a novel. Every detail, every name, every dollar. Barrett's confession printed in full. Ruby's library card shown as evidence. By noon, federal investigators were in Harlem. By evening, Barrett had resigned. By the end of the week, indictments started coming down. Vincent Carbone disappeared, last seen boarding a flight to Mexico City. His employers weren't pleased. Dorothy Williams kept every newspaper, made a scrapbook. On the cover, she pasted Ruby's graduation photo. Underneath, in careful handwriting, "Ruby Williams, age 14, truth teller."
She brought it to Bumpy's office 2 weeks later. "I wanted you to have this, so you remember. I won't forget, Mrs. Williams. I know, but sometimes we need reminders. She changed things. My baby changed things. They wanted to kill her and erase her. Instead, she became louder in death than she ever was in life. That's something, isn't it?" "Yes, ma'am, that's something." She left. Bumpy sat alone with the scrapbook open in front of him. Ruby's face looked up from every page, smiling, proud, young and full of potential that would never be realized. They'd taken that from her, but they hadn't taken her voice. People talked differently now. I asked questions more openly, demanded answers about where money went and who made decisions and why their voices didn't seem to count. Ruby had started that. A 14-year-old girl with a library card and the courage to ask why. He couldn't save them all, couldn't stop every bullet or prevent every tragedy or fix every broken system. But he could make sure their stories were heard. He could make sure they weren't forgotten. You could kill the messenger, but you couldn't kill the message. Not anymore. Not in Harlem. Not while Bumpy Johnson still remembered what protection really meant. If this story hit different, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Ruby's voice deserves to travel far. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story that needs to be told. Because stories like Ruby's, they're the ones that change everything.